Yes, that we are very committed to. So we will guarantee you an internship. We will supervise the internship so that if you're not performing, we are coaching you.
Wow.
You know, so that you then have the highest chances of being offered that job, assuming the company has capacity for that. And then we then keep tracking you after that to make sure that you're thriving.
I want to ask this question as I'm ranting here on your show. The boy child.
Oh, I feel strongly about that.
I feel we are, and I'm just going to give it from my honest perspective. I feel like we're in a pandemic for the boy child. I'm passionately, intentionally trying to hire the boy child, but I'm honestly feeling like either I have bad recruiting skills or there's something going on. What are your thoughts on this?
That we're in a crisis and that we need to recognize that. I think even the US election was an election about boys and men. I think that's the real issue. The other side was about skills. And we need to do better. Across the world, we're seeing statistics that are very alarming about the mental health of boys and men. And we're seeing sometimes it's showing up in suicide rates, but just disengagement and isolation of boys. And it's a tragedy, and we need to do something about it. I worry that people think that if you say these boys are having challenges and we ought to do something about it, that somehow it's saying that girls are okay and that liberation is over. It can be both. And if you have a son and a daughter, you don't say, oh, let my daughter advance so that and then my son stays behind, or let my son move forward. No, we can love all young people and give them opportunity. So I think we need to step up to the challenge of asking ourselves if we're doing right about giving boys opportunities in a way that speaks to them and that makes sure that opportunities are equal for all, or let's say that there's opportunity for all. Let's put it, you can never be perfect.
Yes.
But you can say that we don't like what's going on and we need to change course and something we're doing is not working. So can we listen more closely and create systems and programs that support boys to thrive and to thrive in the way that is their way, right? Like not trying to force them into a box where they have to look like anybody else. But at the same time that I say this, I also always remind people that humans are mostly the same. None of us want to feel useless. None of us want to feel our contribution or our talents don't fit. None of us want to be shamed for who we are, for our gender, for our race, for our background. So in that way, we're the same. We all want dignity, we all want space, and we all want a little bit of grace as we make mistakes and try to find our way. So if you put it that way, then we could start by asking, have we done this for everybody? And then if we haven't, let's fill the gap and start working on this. I do think that the other thing, to link it back to ADMI, is that there are studies that show that TVET in particular, it's good for everybody.
TVET being?
TVET being technical and vocational education. So education where you're taught to work with your hands, to make stuff, to create. And it can range all the way from, welding all the way to creative production.
Okay.
But what studies show is that this has a very impactful it has a huge impact on young people, and it has a correlation to their grades and even whether or not they go to university and whether they thrive in the university. It also has an impact on their income, whether or not they go to university. And so what schools are doing now, it's not about saying that I'm not taking the academic route, I'm now going to TVET. You can introduce TVET alongside the academic path, and then later people have more options. But TVET has been shown, in addition to that, to especially be good for boys. If you can expose boys to some of these things, and especially if you have a son who you feel is not fitting in, there's some parents who wonder if there's something wrong with their son. And then once you put him into spaces where he's contributing on his own terms, he flourishes. And you start saying, you mean this was in there all along, So I think it's important to really declare this boy issue something that needs our attention urgently.
And is there a disproportionate ratio between boys and girls at ADMI?
Yes, but it depends on the program.
Okay.
So overall, there's more boys than girls. I would say we range from 70-30 to 60-40.
Okay.
But usually the girls end up more in animation now. Film tends to be closer.
Yeah.
But then digital marketing, for example, skews more for girls.
Yes.
And we don't know why that's the case. But globally, we're seeing more animators becoming more women. But we do say that it's a place where we are very personalized, and we invest in making sure whoever starts finishes. But it is a very positive space also for boys because of that emphasis on practical.
Okay, you guys start this thing. Where do you move your location to from that time?
So we moved our location to the CBD, just the edge of the CBD, and fitted out a whole new campus at very high spec. But we're in the process now of moving soon again into a larger space.
That space did
very
cut it.
soon.
It was.
We need to grow now, and we need a place where there's more space for studios and some of the things we want to build as part of the support for all these things we've said.
Okay.
As I've said, in the coming year, we're going to be leaning much more into our social mission. And by that, I don't mean necessarily a very big external thing, but it's about really making sure that that promise we've made, that the young people will make it to the end with a portfolio placed and with the right mindset. We really want to invest in that.
Okay, so like, what are some of the... Explain to me that beginning. So now you guys move into this place, you fit it out.
Yeah, we start growing. It really grew in numbers, and including the new program. So it really grew for a while and continues to do so. But I think COVID was the first real challenge.
You've gone through this.
Yeah, so it went up. Yes, exactly, because these things were happening with everybody.
Every 7 years or something.
Yeah. So we'd had a very, very good year in 2019, and then the first quarter of 2020 was fantastic. We made a lot of investments in 2019, but the challenge was that by May of 2020, we were told to shut down. And then that took kind of 2 years of getting, everybody in the right mindset, not inside the firm, but I mean, even in the world, right? About what does this mean? How do we recover?
Were you able to pivot to digital?
Yes, very quickly. Because of being ADMI. We were very fortunate because a lot of the things that many people struggled to do, we had already going for us. Yeah. But it was still a challenge, as it was for everyone.
And are you, at that time, involved in the day-to-day?
Yes, I was very involved in the day-to-day after that, until that point. After that, I reduced my involvement, as did Wilfred, and we allowed the school to continue under independent management. Yeah. But as we speak now, I'm very much involved again because we're going through, what should I say? What should I call it? A revival.
Metamorphosis.
Yes, where we've really gone through a process of reconnecting to our original mission. And we find that this idea of bridging that digital divide, not just people who don't have access to digital, but even people who have digital opportunities but don't know how to translate them into work. I think we have a unique need now to really get families talking to each other, to really get employers talking with employees, because all you hear is a lot of division and separation. And I think it's time for people to translate and bring people back together. It's a very important mission, and I'm not sure there's a more important thing for Africa right now, because as you've seen, if we don't upskill, reskill, we're going to end up in a place where people don't know how to turn their talent into money. And then now you have idle people and, then conflict and depression, and it becomes, So we really need to get on this as well.
You spoke about entrepreneurship and you spoke about paying yourself last. Entrepreneurship is hard and it's not for everybody, but in a situation like this, you've got employees. What happens in a situation like that where revenues are affected, you've got to make difficult decisions about staff, you maybe even have to make difficult going to your own personal coffers to get, I want you to paint the difficulty of entrepreneurship when it comes to making the hard choices.
Oh yeah, that one's rough. So there's a lot of hard decisions all the time, but I think that was exceptionally difficult because we did have a business continuity plan in place, which we immediately called out and started working through.
What does that mean when you say you're the business continuity plan?
So as I explained earlier in the Road Less Stupid, one of the things you need to think about is really what are some of the risks? You have to have a risk log, and there's no business too small, because people say these are things for big companies. You really have to look at what is this risk and how do we manage it? And there's different ways to manage risk. You can transfer the risk, which means basically paying an insurance company to take that risk if things go wrong. There's different ways you can avoid risk. There's different ways you can pass them on to other people. There's ways you can mitigate the risk. There's ways you can behave. For example, if you think of a burglary, I want to protect my house against burglary. So one way is to get insurance, but that kicks in after somebody has already stolen the thing.
Get umbwakali.
Yes, exactly. So you can get a big dog. That's part of mitigation, right? So when you think about the things that
But nobody thinks about a big stone falling from the sky and exploding
landing on your house.
So that's what I'm trying to say is nobody thinks and says, you know what? In 2020, the whole world is going to shut down.
Yeah, that's one. Very few insurance policies
will be
able to move.
I'm like, come on, my guy. Like the whole world.
Yeah.
How can you have planned for COVID?
Yes, there's some things that are really outside. Of course, now many plans say pandemic. Now we know, or floods. These are things, all these climate risks are now coming into. And the other piece is cybersecurity. These are things, before we didn't really have them in our purview, but now they're becoming, as we learn more, we will be incorporating this in our risk matrices. So what you want to do is to set out a plan and to say these are all the things that could go wrong. And there's certain people on your team, lawyers and accountants, who have been trained to be very pessimistic. Those are the people who you give now their field day.
Actuarial guys.
Exactly. And then you actually try and mitigate all of those different risks. So a business continuity plan, what it says is that in the event that there's a shock of a certain kind, these are the processes we'll put into place immediately to, for example, go online. And so if you've been in a place where your plan really has been tested, you can be very quick to respond. You immediately know what committee will be formed, you know what they're going to do as a crisis committee, and they get you back up and running as soon as possible.
So
that's the role.
We
had this thing already in place. We did. Yeah, so it kicked in right away.
It's one thing to have the theory in place, but the practicality of it, like explain to me, like in this situation, you actually thought of the school shutting down and everybody going online?
Well, we didn't know it would be because of a pandemic, but we thought what would happen in the event we were not able to offer classes. It could be mandamano.
Oh, yes.
It could be like if we had to shut down and people couldn't get to class, what would the next thing be? And who would be responsible for doing it? So we're back online in 2 days.
Wow.
Yeah, so you're able to actually plan for such things. Just the same way you can have a fire drill where you train people so that they know how to spring into action. This is the assembly point, things like that. Every business should do that. And I know it sounds theoretical, but at the time of crisis, it can really help you get back on your feet very quickly. Wow. So we did that together as a team, and this means all staff. We sat together and we agreed on how we were going to make it through the pandemic together, which at that time was everybody taking collective pay cuts, with the most senior taking the deepest pay cuts and the most senior choosing to stay off payroll for a while. That being me and my co-founder. And so what that did...
don't love you.
Yeah. Well, this was a crisis. Yeah. So what ended up happening is that then for a period of time, we all pulled together and we got through the pandemic together. And then after that, now when we were... And again, it was a very transparent process. We decided, okay, now at this time, we feel safe to really go back to where we'd been before. It was still challenging because just before that, we had made a lot of investments for expansion into space. There was a lot more equipment, and all of this had cost money. So we had debt that we then had to manage over the next few years. But fortunately, we got through it just by being, as I said earlier, consistent and just follow every month and just do what you said you were going to do. Don't panic because it doesn't help.
Yeah.
So that was how we got through the pandemic.
How do you communicate this? I keep saying the skill of people management is gold. You're telling people that they need to take a pay cut, but people are people. As much as they understand that this has happened, let's do it in 2 months. How do you, I'm not asking for, of course, a direct example, but I'm just like, you've been with people so many different times. How do you do that? How do you manage people?
So how do you manage people? Philosophers have been asking. I saw in the Bible, like somewhere in the Old Testament, a faithful man who can find. I'm like, this guy was already stressed. But I think the way to think about it is, for me, human beings, by the time somebody is 18, and they're walking into your organization as an employee or a service provider, they're coming with their experiences, they're coming with their worldview. So I'm not one of those people who believes that you can change anybody into anything. Like you can motivate somebody into something that they're not. I think sometimes people have an inherent DNA, and the thing you're looking for is somebody who fits with you. And you're going to find, in some cases, even if you're the most generous, most thoughtful leader, there's always going to be people who think you're not doing enough. So it's very important to have a clear vision, communicate it. I believe in cultures that are high support, high challenge. So, if you work with me, you should expect that the standards will be high. We'll expect a lot out of you, but you should also expect a lot of support in terms of ways to help you succeed, and also a lot of transparency about what's really going on. To be fair, many people don't want that, right? Many people don't want to know everything about what's happening in the business, right? They really just want to know, what does this mean for me and my paycheck and my future? And sometimes that's okay. Right? Because if you want to have a strategic view, then that's a characteristic of seniors and people who might have a different, constitution, right? Yes. Because as we said, this is tough stuff. It's not for everybody. And life is hard enough without you now adding all this other intrigue. So I think that's generally some of the things I've learned. Yeah. So for me, I lean towards high support, high challenge. I don't believe a lot of the hype that you can, that if things are not going your way, it's because if you just try harder as the boss, or that you'll somehow make somebody into something that they're not. But I also do believe in the idea of growth, right? So as the organization grows, how do you make sure that everybody's feeling that level of growth in their own lives and towards their own ambition and towards whatever it is they want to learn professionally and become? So you want to share the growth, which sometimes can be challenging. I think entrepreneurs know this. Yes, some people don't want to grow, but also, we're sharing in the rewards, but then if there's a loss or a hit, do we share in that as well, right? So most of the time, and I'm not speaking about pandemic circumstances, but in regular times, people are not trying to share in the risk as well, right? But if there's a reward, then we all want part of that, and that one is human nature.
What that's what I was telling you about, asking about investors and risk. So what have you done with yourself to get yourself to this point as a leader? So that
I have coaching. Everybody must have a coach. So I read a lot. I learn a lot.
What are you reading right now?
I read so many things. So I've been reading this, The Road Less Stupid is one of my favorite books. I have a lot of go-to principles, including things like the founder's mentality, which is something that comes out of BCG, about how when an organization grows... BCG being the Boston Consulting Group, which is something like McKinsey, which is one of these large consulting firms that's global, and that puts out a lot of thought leadership around tools that can help leaders. I have a lot of favorite books that talk about how do you move a company from one stage to the other. And then linked to that is, as a leader, how do you think about not just having integrity for whoever it is you serve as a leader, but also, how are you honest with yourself about your own blind spots and become more self-aware over time? And how do you balance that with a lot of what I consider noise in the environment that can confuse you about what's really going on? So leaders in general want to be compassionate, they want to be fair, and sometimes you have to be careful that in the need to do that, you don't sometimes get easily manipulated into completely losing the focus of where it is you are going and being distracted. So you want to remember that if this business thrives, even the stakeholders in the business thrive. So how do I make sure as a first step that this business is growing and vibrant so it takes care of all the people within its ecosystem? The customer being one, are we delivering on our promise to our clients? And in addition to that, are we then together as a community working together with one voice to deliver value on whatever our brand promise is. Yeah.
Wow. So ADMI, as of this time, is at what place? What stage? Because I've heard you say now you're moving again.
Yes. So ADMI is at a place where we went through a process over the 10 years that I was involved. It was a wonderful celebration when we finally got the top 100, small and medium-sized. We got an award.
Wow.
We've been winning quite a few awards since then. But, top 100 was a very big inflection point because it came just about the time of the pandemic, right after the pandemic when we were recovering from that. But I think the question for us now is, if we say that indeed what we're doing is needed more than ever, which is really providing this language and these tools to help parents, their children, professionals, and companies prepare for the digital age and the digital transformation that we're being called on to, we thought that we had gone through one bump, but with AI, it looks like there's a whole other round of this that we're about to go through. So how do we almost sacrificially serve these different audiences so that we become a way that Africans are able to prepare themselves for the future of work and at a global standard? And how do we do it in such a way that people are very healthy, mentally, emotionally, and all of that? So what this really means is that in addition to the products that we mentioned before, we're going to be moving now into more offerings and career paths, including AI being one, and digital transformation, digital visualization, data visualization as well. And then, of course, content creation will continue all aspects of that. But then the biggest thing is to move to a location where we can work with our global faculty, because we have just gotten certified now to be able to offer degrees or to transition our diplomas into a degree. That's the way to put it. After you've been through ADMI, you can do an additional year with a partner online, and you'll have a degree in whatever of these fields that you're in. In addition to that, we're going to have a much more global faculty. So you'll be able to work with people who have been working in Hollywood, in Pixar, in some of these very big firms, so that we really are delivering on that promise of a digital education. And in addition to that, there'll be much more space, so that the idea of a portfolio where you're really doing hands-on work will be really accomplished.
I get it.
But more than that, cross-cutting, which has nothing to do with products or anything, is really talking more with people about what does this digital age mean for you? What are the stresses that it's causing in you as a parent? How do you talk to your Gen Z child? How do you talk to your Gen Alpha child? And you children, how do you talk better to these people so that they understand you? Because we think that by bridging that, we can really start to make a difference that is more a difference for generations, right? So it's not about selling a product. It's more about what value are we giving? And additionally to that is really this idea of boys. How do we, help boys come back into their voice again? Yeah, as you've raised. Yeah, it's a real concern for many of us.
How long is the course?
So we have two sets of courses. So one is the certificate course, which is done over 12 weeks. Then you can do a diploma, which takes about a year and a half, so 18 months. And that can be in film, it can be in animation, graphic design, digital content creation, animation, sound engineering, and music production, any of those.
Wow.
But after you've done a diploma with us, then you can go to our partner, which gets you a UK degree after an additional year of work.
Nice.
Done of studies. Online. Yes, done online, last year. Yeah, and you'll be able then to combine those two, because you would be transferring to a partner to be able to finish that.
And you said you've also done a 70% rate placement.
Yes, that we are very committed to. So we will guarantee you an internship. We will supervise the internship so that if you're not performing, we are coaching you.
Wow.
So that you then have the highest chances of being offered that job, assuming the company has capacity for that. And then we then keep tracking you after that to make sure that you're thriving. That's another thing we're really going to ramp up in the coming year, so that we make sure we're tracking, really supporting our alumni to continue to thrive.
Do you have statistics of how many people have gone through ADMI?
Yes, so from the diploma side or the certified students, there are almost 4,000.
Wow.
But people who have been trained by ADMI are over 10,000. We have a very large program at present with Google, where in every county we're training young people on content creation. So the numbers are very close to 10,000 now. But this is going to ramp up much more next year. We have a whole plan. to touch people.
Okay, somebody's listening to this in December. Somebody's listening to this in February. Somebody's listening to this in the middle of June. If they want to get, somebody has a child that they'd like to, ask to join this program, how do they get in touch? What can they do? Where are you located? Or if that's not yet so, how do they get in touch?
Yes, the easiest way, if you look ADMI Africa, you can go onto the socials and reach out to us that way. You can go to admi.africa as a website, www.admi.africa, and reach out to somebody there. Or you can just look for us online. Google My Business will show you how to get to us. So there's very many different ways to reach us.
Okay.
And somebody will get back to you really quickly. And we can help you find, not starting from what product or what course,
yes,
but basically what are you looking for? What is your problem and how can we support you? Because there's many different solutions that can help get you on the path to a career that is viable.
So it's not just coming and saying, I want to sign up for animation.
No, we'll have a conversation first.
Yes, you want to sign up to animation, but you begin career development.
Exactly.
I mean, from a mindset perspective.
Yeah.
Why do you want to do this? What are you good at? Oh, maybe you have
Is it right for you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So all the details for that are in the description. But as she clearly said, you can go to the website. It's been scrolling. Just get in touch and somebody will reach out. Let's take a break. We're coming back in a few minutes. Why do I feel like it sounds like we're close to wrapping up?
Are we close to the end?